Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you all for patiently waiting and introducing yourself in the chat box to the right. My name is Lisa and I'm from Futures Without Violence, and we are hosting today's webinar titled Overview of Nonprofit Digital Strategy. This is part of an ongoing webinar series on organizational sustainability, which is supported by the Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women, and part of a training institute we host called the Supporting Organizational Sustainability to Address Violence Against Women Institute, or SOS Institute for short. You will receive emails notifying you of additional webinars in the future, but this webinar will run until 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. During the webinar, your phone line will be muted. You may ask a question or report a technical issue using the chat function on the right of your screen. If you wish to listen to the presentation over your phone, please dial 1-888-850-4523. And the participant code is 755365#. Once you have been connected, please dial *6 so that you can be muted during the call to minimize background noise. I want to point out a couple of the features that we will be using today. Closed captioning is provided in today's presentation. Captions will appear in the box on the bottom of your screen. You have the ability to scroll up and down in this box. Please note that when you manually scroll through the text, the auto scroll will be disabled. To re-enable this feature, please click on the auto scroll box located on the upper right corner of the captioning box. At the end of this presentation, we will have a question and answer section. Please feel free to type questions into the chat box throughout the presentation. The chat box is again located on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer all questions by the end of the presentation. We'll work to address the questions if they're short questions during the presentation, but otherwise we'll save them for the very end. For technical support during the presentation, please send me a private chat message. I'm here under the name Anisa Ali by clicking the chat box drop-down menu on the upper right corner of the box and choosing the Start Chat with Host option. You can also call 1-800-422-3623 for Adobe Tech Support, and I'll provide all of these numbers in the chat box once I'm done. At the end of the webinar, we will be prompted to answer a short evaluation. Please take a moment to give us feedback on today's presentation and also make suggestions for future topics. We want to be responsive. Also, as a reminder, a recording of today's webinar and a PDF version of the PowerPoint slides will be available on our website after the presentation, and also available in the Files To box below the chat box. As I mentioned earlier, today's webinar is part of a series that we are providing under the umbrella of the SOS Institute. The Institute was created in 2010 and offers an interactive 2.5-day training and ongoing technical assistance for OBW grantees to enhance their organizational infrastructure. Participation for the Training Institute is built around teams of 3 to 4 individuals from the same organization, which may include the executive director, board member, and program staff. We cover a broad range of topics from aligning your mission and core values to effective collaborations to staff development. We have an extraordinary team of faculty who are veterans in organizational sustainability, given that they have either founded, have led, or are leading various CVSC organizations. Today, we have invited experts in the field of digital strategy and communications. Joining us is Future's longtime partners in digital strategy, MediaCause, to lead the webinar. We have Sarah Potts, Director of Digital Strategy, bringing 8 years of experience working in a variety of industries and nonprofits. We also have Christy Kosak, Senior Account Manager, and she positions herself on the front lines of innovation in social media and applies that knowledge to the broader spectrum of digital marketing across channels. We'll also feature 2 case studies of how organizations in our field have utilized digital media to tell stories, fundraise, and reach organizational goals and missions. First, we have our Future's Director of Communications, Marsha Robertson. She has over 25 years of experience as a seasoned marketing and public relations executive and communication specialist. She also worked as Director of Media Relations for HBO original movies in New York and then moved to San Francisco, where she's transitioned to nonprofit marketing and communications. Then we will feature our 2 guest speakers from the program of Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board. When I asked my 2 colleagues at Futures what campaigns or organizations they think of when it comes to social media savviness, people immediately piped up with We Are Native. So we're very excited to have them join us. And today we have David Stevens, Multimedia Project Specialist from We Are Native, program of Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board. David has a unique blend of health promotion and digital marketing experience. He is both a registered nurse and manages We Are Native's media channels and all content creation. And Thomas Lee Gostog Jr., project assistant, and he assists with several adolescent health promotion projects and manages We Are Native's Youth Ambassador Program. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to the folks at MediaCause who will start us off. And I see that we have several people with issues related to audio. We'll take care of that separately, and we're just going to keep rolling because this webinar will be recorded. It is recorded, so we'll get started.
Hey everyone, this is Sarah with MediaCause. I'm here with Christy.
Hi everyone, just myself. I know Lisa did a great job, but we've actually been working with Futures for almost 4 years now, and it's been great to see their digital presence grow, and we're just excited to talk about some of the strategies that we've implemented for them and some of our other things.
Perfect. And so first, a quick note, my allergies are terrible today, so if I mute myself on occasion to blow my nose, that is out of respect for all of you. And a quick note as well that it was really great to see how many of you answered some survey questions for us beforehand. We are happy to see that the majority of you are interested in talking about social media, followed by email, followed by fundraising, and then a lot of people interested in websites and analytics as well. That's a lot of pieces. We've done our best to hit all of them over the next about 30 minutes that we'll be sharing with you. And if you have follow-up questions, we hope to be able to answer those afterwards. So here we go. To be successful as digital marketers, we need to know 2 things. The first one is what we're trying to say. This is, why do you need to be talking? What's your mission? What's your goal? All of us have causes that we're working for, but what is that key component that is the most important thing to be sharing? The second piece is how to get our message to the right people. Once we know what we're trying to say, who's going to be the person with the sympathetic ear, and how do we deliver that message? This breaks down into communications and marketing. Knowing what you want to say is communications, and then the distribution channels you use is marketing. They go hand in hand. Overarching this entire concept is digital strategy. I really think about digital strategy as being the integration of all of the impact that's going on within your organization. So when you integrate your communications and marketing through your digital platforms, you're able to take your most important messages and get it to your most valuable audiences. Thinking about your organization in general, we looked at how many people were in each of your organizations when you shared that information with us. It looks like a lot of you are working on teams of about 0 to 2 people total. A couple of you are lucky enough to have a few more people on your team, which is amazing. But the important thing about digital goals is that they work really well when they're integrated with your fundraising goals and your program goals. It means that when you know what your programs are trying to accomplish, you can find that central communication strategy. And then if you know what your development team's goals are, you can figure out how much money you need to raise when. And then your digital communications and marketing team should work to craft those stories and send them out through the internet to the right people so that you can get the money you need for the programs you're trying to execute. More on digital strategy here is as we're thinking about who our supporters are. The more that we can keep in mind the people who are hearing this message, the more successful your communications will be. Some of us have organizations that have a really small group of donors or a really small community-led group. These people are going to know a lot about you. They're not going to need introductory information. They're going to want the details about how is the issue improving? What are you doing with your programs to improve the issue? How can they get involved? Digital is going to try and find easy ways to communicate those updates with those people. Another high-level option is if you're trying to grow your community, or perhaps you have a widespread community, if you're trying to talk to people who don't know as much about the issue, or if you've been lucky enough to have a lot of growth recently, focusing on some of the background issues is really important. We call that evergreen content. It's content that's just about the issue and about your strategy and about the impact that you make year over year. That content is really valuable to be shared across your platforms so that everyone who's new to you knows what you're about. I wanted to share a quick note here about internal disagreements in marketing style. We get this question a lot from our clients about, you know, our point of contact at an organization wants to do some, have an idea that they think will be really successful, but the development team has a slightly different opinion, or the programs team has a different opinion. We find it to be really helpful as long as everything is correct. You know, you don't want to be wrong with the information you're putting out there, but as long as everything's correct, is to try all of the different options and then to track everything. We'll get to tracking a little bit later, and there's a bunch of great blogs about how to track up on our website. Also, if you guys have the spare time with all that work that you do to learn more about tracking. But this can let you know if the red button or the blue button did better, or is a better call to action, stop domestic violence now, or help save women. Is it more positive? Is it more action-oriented? When you have these different words and you can track them, you can let everyone's ideas win and then see which ones your community responds best to. This gets us a little bit to your website, your home. All of your tracking can lead you back to your website. I really think about it as the place where you want all of your users, all of your community, everyone that you would ever meet. You want them to feel comfortable, as if you're long-term friends and you're welcoming them into your living room. Your website is great because it can also track all interactions. If you have Google Analytics set up on your website, great job. That is going to help you understand how people are using your website. Are they coming to your homepage? Are they coming to your programs page? How many people have clicked on your donate button in the past 6 months? All of this information helps you figure out what people are looking for. And if you find that a lot of people are coming to your website and leaving really quickly because the time on site is low, or you'll see that people are only looking at 1 or 2 pages and you want them to see more, that can be really great insights to maybe put some new information up or to build out information about exactly what you do. We can get into that a little bit more later if there are specific questions about that. But I do want to talk about digital touch points, lead acquisition, and nurturing. So these are definitely stereotypical marketing terms, but what they mean in the most basic ways, touch points are all the ways that you can say hello to someone. If I were to Google Futures Without Violence, I could find their website, I could find their Twitter, I could find their Facebook, I can sign up for their email. All of those are different touch points. And so when I'm a user brand new to Futures Without Violence, I want to feel like when I see each of those pieces of communication that they all feel really similar. That way, when I am a lead, I'm someone who doesn't know them, and I sign up for an email or I sign up to follow people on social media. That way, I can know exactly who I'm talking to. Then when we get to nurturing, that's a little bit more about email. How does when someone say hello, how does your organization do a great job of making them feel like they're really important to you? Then eventually you can convert these groups of people either to being fundraisers or to attending events or to being volunteers, whatever is most important for your organization. So let's think through your touch points a little bit. Your guiding principle should be, what story are you trying to tell? So this is every interaction you have with everyone. How do you figure out what's that key story that's going to go from saying like, hello, my name is, and insert name of organization, and then saying one sentence that gets someone really interested. That's your acquisition. And then your nurture is that kind of like paragraph, the next couple ideas about why you're interesting. And then the conversion is asking them to donate, attend an event, etc. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, next slide, thank you. Here's an example of one piece of content that we have from one of our clients. It's important to note that just your impact that you're making and the content that you're sharing is the most important. It is the way that everyone who doesn't get to be in your weekly meetings gets to feel connected to the incredible work each of you are doing. This example that we have over here has some information highlighted in red. It's a text overlay. A lot of people can make these in a lot of different tools. So these aren't necessarily out of reach if you don't have a designer on your team. But this is trying to put your community first. What do they need to know? What is your community? Why do they care about the work that you do? Do they care about it because you're reducing risk for people in their community? Do they care about you because you are hosting really great events where people can meet and greet and talk to each other? And what's interesting about your organization to your community, and how do you make sure to put that first? When you put that first, you can then engage people so that they're always excited to hear from you. And once they're excited to hear from you, you have the opportunity to ask that things of those people. When you're asking people to do things in general on all your digital strategies, you're going to have a couple different platforms to those touch points. You're going to have your email, you're going to have your social, you're going to have your website. Each touch point should roll up into a larger strategy. Your larger strategy can be things like, we want to get 200 people to attend our event. How do we do that? We want to get 2,000 people to know more about domestic violence. How do we do that? When you're able to set clear numerical goals around your different communications points, you're able to leverage all of your touch points to try and achieve the same goal together. The next kind of slide talks a little bit about like where you should tell your story. Here's some questions we often hear. What social channels should we be on? What is an emerging channel? What's an emerging platform? How do I tell my board we shouldn't be on Instagram? How often should we email? All kinds of things like this. I think the biggest point I want to drive home here is that the internet is huge, and it's much better to be good in a couple places than it is to be ubiquitous. I've seen sometimes organizations, if you're trying to stake out your name, if you have a specific brand name that you think is pretty unique, you can get different social profiles and hold your name so that no one else can post with your name. That can be very valuable. But as far as what social channels you should be on, that depends on where your audience is. And I'm going to let Christy talk about that in just a minute. I want to note that an emerging platform is a social media platform like Twitter, like Facebook, that is new. You know, Silicon Valley has come up with a new great idea, and maybe the kids are on it. It could be Snapchat is an example of a new one, probably no longer emerging, but people are using it a lot more right now. Kik is an example of a newer platform. Things like that, where no one was on it 6 months ago, and now there are a lot of people on it. A quick note for how to tell your board we shouldn't be on Instagram is to really push back and ask what the goals are of being on a new platform. Every time you add a new platform, it adds a lot of time to whoever is managing your community to be able to maintain your brand and your voice in another location. It's almost like adding another event that you have to go to once a week. It's a pretty heavy burden. So anytime someone asks you why you aren't doing something on social, I think a great question and response is, oh, that's a great question. What do you think a good goal would be for that platform? And then you can start the conversation to be about goals and not about brand visibility, because when you don't have a lot of time, it's really important to be strategic around what goals you think you can achieve on each platform. We'll get into email in a minute, and we'll get into welcome series as well. So just perhaps a little hint of what is to come, but I'm going to hand it over to Christy to get a little bit more into social media.
Hello, everyone. So I'm kind of the social guru of the dynamic duo here. I've been working with Futures Social for quite a while, so I just wanted to touch on a few different aspects. One thing that I often hear from clients and potential clients is, where do I get started? Social media can be really overwhelming, especially in the nonprofit land when you're kind of wearing 50 different hats at a time. So one great way to get started is to really evaluate your resources. How much time can you dedicate to managing social media? Do you have the ability to outsource social media? Kind of figuring out how it can fit into the larger structure. One great way to determine what platforms you'd like to be on is to create a list of the top 10 people you want to reach. And this can be influencers in the space. It can be Gloria Steinem, for example. What is she doing? Where do we want to be? But it can also be potential supporters. I want to reach Joanne, who lives in Texas and volunteers at her local domestic violence shelter. That sort of thing. You can kind of go both routes. But create that list and kind of figure out, where are those people interacting, communicating? If someone's really tech savvy, they might be operating more heavily on Twitter versus someone of an older generation might be more on Facebook. It's really kind of determining where your demographics and target audiences are engaging. One thing that we do with a lot of our new clients is persona development. And this kind of ties back into evaluate your resources, because this is a bit of a heavy lift, but you can gain a lot of insight into doing persona development for your organization. What we do when we're looking at persona development is examine the way supporters are using social media, and these are the existing supporters. We want to know where they're acting with your brand, how else they're using it, and oftentimes we'll do interviews with individuals. Sarah's going to chime in really quick.
I'm going to pop in because she's very kind to share her speaking time with me. I think a great thing to think about, if you guys have approximately $10 total to spend on all of your outreach for this, is if you have someone on staff that can call some of your long-term donors, or can get in contact with anyone who's been a supporter of yours, and just ask them, do they follow you on Twitter? Do they follow you on Facebook? Are the people who are helping your organization be successful following you on the social media that you're investing time into? That's the step one that we do with all of our clients, is just helping them figure out, are their most engaged and most valuable supporters engaging with them on the platforms that they're investing resources in. And you can start that off with, you don't need to be a marketer to do that. That's an easy conversation that I recommend everyone do to figure out if they're reaching the right target audience.
Thanks, Sarah. So that's just one component of it. And then lastly, just really identifying social media leads and influencers in the space. Other people, I don't like to say competition because in nonprofit we like to think there are no competition, but there definitely is. And just looking at how other organizations in your space are using different platforms can help give you some insight into whether or not they're tapping into an audience that you may also want to be tapping into. The example I've included here is from one of our clients, the Natural Resources Defense Council, and they've done a great job in tapping into sort of the activist side of their followers and potential followers. This is actually an Instagram post, and they've used this sort of methodology to appeal to the kind of scenic landscape that happens on Instagram, and they've really been able to tap into that audience via that channel. So I just wanted to show this one example here. Moving on, I just wanted to give a brief overview of what I call the big guys of social media. I think it's probably most organizations are on at least Facebook, if not Facebook and Twitter. I just wanted to give a bit of insight into what those audiences look like. So obviously Facebook is a little more weighted. 57% of adults are using that platform, which is a pretty big number when you think about it, versus 19% on Twitter. There are 1.44 billion active users on Facebook monthly. And the average American spends about 40 minutes a day on Facebook, and that definitely varies between age groups, although I think the older generation is catching up at this point. And the one great thing about Facebook is that you can show a wide range of visual content. You can show images, you can have text-only updates. They've really been pushing video lately, which is a great opportunity. We've seen some really amazing results from their autoplay feature. And they're also constantly updating the ways that brands can depict themselves creatively on the platform. I could spend 20 minutes talking about all the different ways, but this is just a broad overview, so I will skip that. And then on Twitter, one thing I love about Twitter is that it really forces brands to communicate concisely what they want their users to know. A lot of people find the 140-character count intimidating, but I like to approach it as a unique challenge to really focus on the key components that you're trying to communicate. And I think it really makes organizations think about what they want their users to know. And then one great thing about Twitter is also that you can really track and engage in conversations through the use of hashtags. And I know that Marcia is going to get into this a bit in her presentation, but we've seen a lot of great movements happen around hashtags, particularly in the nonprofit space. I think we can probably all name quite a few off the top of our head. But I think it's just a great way to expand the reach of your organization if you can tap into the right audiences. And like I said before, it's great for really brief pieces of information and concisely communicating what you want people to know. So it's just a brief overview of what I call the big guys, and there are quite a few others, but we'll get into those later. A few best practices. I know we've talked a lot about goals, and we're probably going to talk a lot more about goals, because that's really the focus of all of your digital efforts, is to achieve some of your organizational goals. So one thing we like to do is kind of break down the goals to specific platforms. If you're on Facebook, what do you want your audience to do there? Do you want them to share content with their audience? Do you want them to click through to your website to take an action, sign a petition? Or would you like them to just engage on the platform, give opinions? Are you wanting to gain more insight about your audience? Maybe you can ask them a question there. It's really kind of honing in on how this fits into your overarching goal and really breaking it down by platform. And a great way to kind of analyze whether or not you're being successful is to look at some key metrics that you would like to use to measure success. One thing that we tend to do is benchmark based on a time period that we're planning to measure moving forward. With our clients, this tends to be monthly, but really looking back, 2 months from the start date and seeing how you performed, and then setting those numbers as a benchmark moving forward and how you'd like to analyze your performance ahead of time. And it kind of creates some competition with yourself to keep the numbers moving upward. One question I get a lot about social media is how much content should we be posting? And I think everybody expects an absolute answer, and I'm going to disappoint you and say that there is no absolute answer. You really just need to figure out what the best sort of gauge of your audience is to be able to reach them at the right times of day. And this will require some experiment on your part as you kick off, but I think once you hit your sweet spot, you'll know exactly what you're doing, and just continuing to measure and analyze. If you see a drop-off in your audience, maybe you're posting too much. But just to give an idea, I have one client that posts 10 times a day on Facebook, and I have some clients that post 3 times a week. So it's really just figuring out how you're going to be able to best engage your audience. One great thing you can do when you are posting 10 times a day is utilize scheduling tools that are available for the platforms. There are so many available, but 2 of the ones that I think of off the top of my head that are really useful in the nonprofit space, particularly because they're free. First of all is Facebook's on-platform scheduling tool. You can actually schedule content out in advance, just right on your page. You can also draft content to send out later on. It's just a great tool, and it allows you the most capability to make sure your posts look great. And then I also would recommend using Hootsuite, checking into Hootsuite, because you can schedule out content for multiple platforms, and it's really great for monitoring your brand as well. So those are just 2 tools off the top of my head that can make your job easier and provide a little bit less of a lift if you're not wanting to log on every day.
I wanted to make a note about monitoring. For those of you who don't know what Hootsuite is and haven't really monitored social before, some of that monitoring can look like how many people have replied to you over the past week. And you can create a list where you can just see all of the replies. And you can create a list and you can start to follow a couple people back, and it aggregates the information in a slightly different way so you can have different insights on it. So for those of you brand new to Twitter, that's what that looks like.
And then lastly, I just wanted to add a note about knowing your audience and staying on your toes. One thing that's intimidating, but also the greatest thing ever about social media is that it's constantly evolving. You're always going to find new ways to reach out to your audience. People are going to be on new platforms, or they're going to be using the platform in different ways. We've been able to tap into this, for example, with Facebook's video, and really kind of leverage that to our advantage and come up with some cool concepts for our clients. But I think just keeping an eye on things and seeing if there are any new types of content appearing in your feed, just really keeping your eyes open is basically what I'm trying to say. So social media management tools, I'm going to go into this a bit more. I have the second tool that I mentioned, Hootsuite, is spelled out on this slide here. So I saw a couple questions come up about that. It's spelled out here if you wanted to write it down. So one thing that can also play into social media management is not just a scheduling tool, but kind of an internal roadmap of sorts. We call it a social content calendar, and you'll see that a lot in the space. But I think this really can help your social efforts go hand in hand with your larger communication efforts. Again, goals, goals, goals. How are all of these things working together to feed into your larger communication strategy? And they really should be going hand in hand. Again, take advantage of the free scheduling tools available just to make your life easier. If you could spend an hour a week on those free tools scheduling things out, that'll make it much more accessible if you have a smaller team. One thing that I always think is beneficial is to develop social media protocols and guidelines for team members. This is particularly helpful if you have multiple people managing a social media account, or if you're kind of if you're encouraging your internal team to participate on social as well. This will just give them guidelines of what not to talk about, what to talk about, and how they can kind of communicate your mission. Another tool that you can use just in terms of tracking how people are engaging, and this is getting a bit more technical in the tracking side of things. As Sarah mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of great content on our blog about these specific things, but I just wanted to touch on them here because they feed into kind of what we're doing for all of our clients. So Bitly, if you've never heard of it, it can shorten a link on social media so it's not taking up a huge long space and just make it more concise. But one handy thing is it also tells you how many clicks the link is getting. So you can log in and see how many people are interacting with that specific link. And then getting way more technical, Google's URL Builder helps you add tracking to the end of your links so that if you do have Google Analytics linked up to your website, you can go in and see how a specific link performed and what path people took as they went through that link on your website. So again, a little more technical, but if you want more info on that, we're going to provide contact information later, and you can always follow up with us.
And I want to reiterate here that you can absolutely use this tool. It is more technical, but once you learn the basics of it, it's very intuitive, and I want to encourage anyone who has any level of interest in this to go for it. I think this is well within everyone's grasp. If you're here and you're working hard on an issue, you're smart enough to figure it out. I believe in you. It's my turn to talk more. Here we go. So let's talk about email. Now that Christy rounded out all of social, ways for you guys to save some time, plan out your content, analyze your content, that's one way for you guys to be thinking about how are you managing one relationship. Email is your most personal relationship. When you're talking to someone on social media, everyone knows that you're talking to the whole world. It has a very megaphone style feel to it. Even though you can have personal conversations with people, and we recommend that you do that as you have time to do so, email is your opportunity to really connect with people one-on-one. You can use first names. I highly encourage you to do that. And there are 3 different big types of emails that you can send. One is a news update. This typically is sort of about what you're up to. This is a general, sometimes it's a newsletter, sometimes people do it quarterly. I'm finding a lot of our clients right now are using quarterly emails instead of weekly or monthly emails to keep people up to date on what the organization as a whole is doing, and then saving some time in their communications calendar for campaign and appeal and timely emails. So campaigns are going to be a series of communications, and this can be a series of emails along with social media, along with you could even like change an image on your homepage so that everyone knows if they come to you or they hear about you in any way during the 3 to 12 days while you're running a campaign, everyone knows that you're trying to achieve something together. Campaigns to mobilize action. You can try and get people to tell their friends about you so that they will follow you, growing your digital communities. You can be trying to educate people about a new stat you found or a new framing of an issue that you found powerful. You can be trying to get people to sign petitions, raise money, or attend an event. The appeal is a call to action for how people can help today. This is sort of a subset of a campaign email. A campaign should have an arc to it. There should be a little bit of a storytelling. People should understand why you're telling them about this, why this matters now, and then the appeal email answers the third question of what should I do to help. An appeal email can be short and sweet, really clear, and then some of our clients are very hesitant to try short appeal emails. I would love it if everyone who has MailChimp tries an A/B test email where you can test 2 different content types, write out your long appeal with that like letter from the executive director, very, very traditional, very informative, very comfortable, and test that against an appeal that's really short, that says the same story but in under a paragraph and has a big button that says like help today. Testing those kinds of things can be so incredibly valuable. You'll start to see different groups of people responding to different types of messages, and it can really up how many people are converting.
Hi, I think we're getting a lot of feedback. So for all the speakers, if you could please mute your computer speakers. And maybe I need to,
It just stopped.
okay, so the feedback stopped. So all the speakers, could you mute your computer audio and then try talking again now?
This is Sarah. We better, everyone?
Yep, great.
All right, no news. Perfect. All right, so that's email, most personal relationships, 3 general types. Segments are important because they help you understand how all of these people who are on your email list, whether it's 200 or 200,000, how do they know you? It's the same way if you met someone at a party on a Friday night, you're going to interact with them differently than if you met someone at church on a Sunday morning. Knowing what that initial impression that someone had of you is so important to knowing what the next step is in communicating with them. So we break out 3 general categories. Events. This is if someone signed up for your email list while they were at your gala, at a speaking event, at any sort of thing where they saw you in person. We break this one out because people typically are more engaged if they signed up for your email list from an event. They already have done one of the actions, which is to come to an event, and these people are more likely to donate, more likely to be a part of your key core missions. We also talk about online. These are people who signed up to hear from you guys online. These are typically going to require the longest period of time to become engaged with you, and that's why an online subscription, having a welcome series is really valuable. I think I get to that in the next slide, and if I don't, I'll just speak to it then. And then the third one is through a specific campaign. If you have a list and you know that 400 people signed up for your email list during a awareness campaign about the number of teenagers in abusive relationships, then you know that everyone who has signed up from that campaign cares about teenagers for some reason. So when you come to the end of the year, ask if you want to segment out by those people. Even though your big overall donation strategy might be to ask people to fund your work for another year, You might ask those people who had indicated that they were interested in teen relationship awareness to say, you know, our program needs $7,000 more to be able to continue our teen-sponsored programming. Can you help us? And that specific appeal to that specific relationship has a higher likelihood to succeed. So this welcome series, oh, it's on the same slide, look at me go. This welcome series is a way to help people get to know you as soon as they sign up without you guys having to do anything. It's automatic. You can set these also up in MailChimp. MailChimp is our preferred email use case for our clients because it's cheap and easy to use. A welcome series is 2 to 3 emails typically. A first email sent out within 24 hours of signing up that gives them an idea like, welcome to the family. This is who you're talking to. It sets the relationship and the standard for how often you'll be communicating with them, saying, thank you so much for joining Futures Without Violence. You can expect to hear from us at least once a month and anytime we have special events that are happening. The second email, this is where you can start to decide what you think is important. Sometimes people focus on a specific project. Some people focus on the issue in general. We really recommend in this second or third email asking people to consider signing up to follow you on Facebook or Twitter or wherever else you are likely to be. Getting people on multiple platforms is an important part of the touch point theory because the more places people can hear from you, the more connected they will be to you and the less likely they are to atrophy and just sort of like wave off your list. This gets us to a note on fundraising. I want to just talk a little bit about membership programs. When you are able to get someone to become a member, which right now I'm defining as an ongoing monthly, means that you have to convince someone one time to make the decision to donate to you, but that donation will continue over time. Whereas if you ask someone to donate once and then you ask them 6 months later to donate again, they have to make 2 mental and emotional decisions to part with their money. The fewer times you ask someone to part with their money, the more successful you will be with that person. And when you have an ongoing donation program, you can have someone donating once a month all year, so that's 12 times, and then you can also ask them to donate during big campaigns. So that means that your likelihood of getting donations from this individual person goes from 1 to like 13 or 14 if you're able to convert them during a campaign and an end of year ask. We don't see any individual anywhere responding to 13 campaigns throughout a year. So being able to build up a membership program allows you to communicate clearly with a small group of people, and it allows you to get those donations over time. And also have some good messaging around your donations help us be successful. You know, thank you for being a core member of our community. You can make people feel really special by being a part of that membership program. Last note on fundraising is use current events as much as possible. It doesn't have to be a big campaign. It can be just something in the news. You can see a hashtag that's trending, and if you think it has something to do with your work in general, hop in on it, have a conversation with someone, introduce yourself to someone, explain how your organization is the solution, and then you can also drive people to your donation page if the timely event has to do with your work. This is a quick client example I just want to share with you guys. This is just a really aspirational one. We've been working with Cornell for over 5 years. We advanced the lab's mission with a multi-touchpoint strategy, and our goal was to attract and engage people who love birds through aggressive content marketing. Content marketing is when you invest in creating content. In their case, they landing pages, and they had a whole repository of bird sounds, and they'd invested a ton of money into that, and so we wanted to leverage that to get more people to know about the lab. Here are some of the impressive numbers they were able to achieve. So you can see over there everything worked really well. One number I want to point out is the very last number, which is a 67-cent lead acquisition cost. This is a little technical. What it means is that for every email that we acquired for them, we anticipated that email to be worth 67 cents based on how much people donated. This varies by channel, this varies by organization, this varies by industry, but we were, and the lab has been very happy with the numbers, like 70% of new donations coming from digital efforts, 13% year-over-year growth, and over $2 million in online donations. I want this to be kind of an inspiration and a thought that when you invest in your digital platforms over time, with strategery is what I was going to say, but that's not a word. But when you're strategic about your investment in digital, you're able to track your efforts over time and optimize them and lead to really great results.
And I just want to note, I added a link there for the case study in case anyone wanted to read more in depth about our work with Cornell, because we're big fans of our work with them, and to give you further inspiration if you'd like to check it out. There's the URL at the bottom.
All right, and then here's our little inspiration of we just wanted to say, like, make something great today. When we saw everyone introducing themselves, we were really inspired by all the organizations that we're hopping on, and we're so thankful that all of you took the time to listen to us share some of our thoughts on this, and that we believe that everyone is already doing great work, and that making something great digitally is 100% within your capacity, and we look forward to seeing it.
And then we've just added a slide here for further reading and tools. I think this will be more handy once you guys are going through after you download the webinar when we send out the follow-up email. So that's everything on our end. I think we're going to turn it over to Marcia Robertson from Features. She's the Director of Communications there, and she's going to chat a bit about how digital marketing has changed what they're working in and how they've been able to sort of leverage breaking news to further their mission. So Marcia, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone. I just want to say thank you to Sarah and Christy for sharing your wisdom. We are very lucky working with Media Cause. Absolutely. So let's start with a quick introduction to Futures Without Violence if you don't already know us. We're a health and social justice nonprofit that's been working to end violence against women and children for more than 30 years. We work from offices in San Francisco, Boston, and Washington, D.C. We develop work from offices, we develop national policies, programs, social action campaigns. In the last couple of years, we've really enjoyed the opportunity to expand our website and social media. So the bad news, our communications team is a small one, 2.5 full-time staff, that's 2 in San Francisco, including me, and the half-time of a very smart teammate in our D.C. office. So if you are out there listening and you have 10 communications staff, don't tell me about that. Don't email me. Let me know how lucky you are. So what I want to talk to you today, something a little, oh, Lisa. I'm sorry. How do I get back? Pardon me for a moment. The wrong button? Yeah, just do the arrow. So today we're here to talk about digital strategies. And one of those I'd like to call out is how to leverage digital tools to raise visibility for your organization. In other words, how to use the news to your advantage. Believe it or not, I'm going to talk about sports and domestic violence as a case study because it's a topic that continues to keep our conversation in the media. And based on events, I have got a bad habit, folks, of a space bar. Someone's going to tape it down to me so that I don't do this again. I'm so sorry. All right, here's where I want to be. So based on the events of the last couple of years, there hasn't been a better time to call out bad behavior in professional sports while teaching the next generation about healthy relationships. But first I'd like to talk about where we're getting our general news. The truth is 5 years ago, most people were relying on traditional outlets, newspapers, magazines, TV, and radio, but we all know there's been a shift. Today we're very likely to stay in the know with social media. So here are 3 news outlets from my Facebook feed last week: the New York Times, Elle Decor, and the Daily Beast. That means photo, headline, and click here to see full story. Yes, it is true that all of them compete with funny cat videos for my attention, but in the course of the day, I'm able to access top news from my favorite sources. That makes me one of the 62% of Americans who get some of their news from a social networking site. And Facebook happens to lead the pack, followed by Twitter, Reddit, and Tumblr. So guess what? New rules and new tools. How can we raise them to help you raise awareness for your work? Before we move forward, I'd like to take you backward for a moment. I'd like to tell you about a seminal year for the issue of domestic violence and how activists successfully used the news. The year was 1994. President Clinton signed a crime bill that included the groundbreaking Violence Against Women Act. That meant $1.6 billion for investigation and prosecution of violence against women. Invaluable services for victims and survivors. In fact, it was a landmark legislation. But 1994 was memorable for another reason. Can you think why? Football legend O.J. Simpson went on trial for the murder of his wife and her friend, and the story came into our living rooms with lurid details around the news coverage. When it was revealed that O.J. had a long history of abusing his wife, the topic of domestic violence moved from the back page of the newspaper, and our newspapers saw them on the front page. A formerly private issue went very public. Esther Solar, the founder and president of Futures Without Violence, was in Washington, D.C. that day. And when news of O.J.'s arrest went public, a high-ranking female official turned to her and said, "Esther, this is your moment." And she was right. O.J. trial provided an opportunity for grassroots organizations all over the country to raise up the stories of their victims and survivors and get media attention. Many wanted to share their stories but never had. Ironically, Futures Without Violence, which was called the Family Violence Prevention Fund at the time, had been preparing the very first public service announcement with the Ad Council. It was called "There's No Excuse for Domestic Violence." So that once again, the 1994 timing was great. A PSA was distributed. Thousands of newsletters were mailed to shelters and advocates all over the country. There were tips and tools about how to talk to your press, how to write a press release, all the old school tools, but they worked. In fact, we did a survey of newspaper stories that investigated domestic violence coverage in the Washington Post and the New York Times. And here's what we found. Before 1980, tiny number of stories. During the 1980s, improving slightly. But in the 1990s and into the following decade, thanks to O.J. Simpson's trial and the grassroots organizing tactics, news coverage rose dramatically. And we believe that more media reflected a gradual change in social and cultural behavior. Why do I point this all out? It's to remind all of ourselves that the power of media is strong. It can expose and amplify our issues. So now I'm going to jump ahead another 20 years, 2014. Unfortunately, two other celebrated NFL athletes in the news. Baltimore Raven Ray Rice knocked out his fiancée in an elevator, and it was caught on video, literally for all the world to see on YouTube. Dallas Cowboy Richie Incognito constantly bullied a teammate with profane, racist, and homophobic slurs. But what happened with the media's reaction to domestic violence and bullying this time? What happened 20 years later? You're right. In the 20 years that had passed, digital media happened. So we got the viral spread of the Ray Rice video, the digital news site, the Facebook posts, the angry tweets. Social media created a firestorm of outrage against the NFL, and there was the collective angst of regular folks, celebrities, civic leaders, sports journalists, bloggers, and yes, TV advocates. But if you were the president of the National Football League, Roger Goodell, you might wake up to this. It seemed that everyone had opinions and everyone had access to shareable graphics and social media. But back in our world, at the Offices of Futures Without Violence, we thought these are incidents that accumulate to another teachable moment. We wanted to be part of the conversation even before the NFL responded to Ray Rice's shocking act with a minor 2-game penalty. So what did we do? We emailed local and national press and offered our organization as a resource for journalists. We wrote an op-ed for the Huffington Post. We emailed thank you notes to press who were taking a stand. With the help of Media Cause, we created posts and images for Facebook and Twitter. We were among many activists who helped raise the volume of the conversation. The high point for us was probably a first-person story by Esther Solar, our president, in Sports Illustrated. This was the best place we could imagine to take a stand and communicate with the team's owners as well as the fans. So organizations like ours, and yours, I'm sure, were speaking out, but there was also another grassroots response bubbling up. Twitter was flooded with heart-wrenching stories from women explaining why they remained in abusive relationships or why they finally left. The emotional outpouring was collected under hashtags, why I stayed and why I left. And a writer and domestic abuse survivor named Beverly Goodman said she started the campaign when she saw Ray Rice's video because she wanted to change the tone of the conversation with compassion. She said, I believe that we find strength in community. Time magazine called it #feminism, and it had quite an impact. So here's a recap of our digital actions over a couple of months, and all of these can be done in your local market. We emailed a statement to 30 top outlets. We wrote op-eds. We sent top news clips to our constituents to engage them on the topic. We emailed thank you notes. We created shareable graphics, We tweeted directly to sports writers and influencers who were in the conversation. And you can do this easily as well. Find a domestic violence news event in your town or state that's getting coverage. And unfortunately, we know that won't be too hard to find, right? Email the media outlet, let them know your organization would like to be considered as a resource or spokesperson on the topic of DV or sexual assault today. Create social media graphics, distribute them to your Facebook and Twitter networks, hoping that they will spread your messaging even further. And at this point, maybe you're thinking, you can't afford a designer, and oftentimes we can't either. So take a look at an app called Canva. It's spelled C-A-N-V-A. Super easy to use. Anyone can use it to build shareable graphics for social media. It'll be your secret weapon. So for me, the goal is to share personal stories that put a face on domestic violence and sexual assault. We want the media and society at large to know that violence can and does happen off the field among professional athletes. But we all know that it's happening to our neighbors, our coworkers, our friends. 22 years later, there's still no excuse for domestic violence. But there is some good news since 1994, and it doesn't get enough attention. According to a White House statistic, domestic violence against adult women has dropped by 67% in the last 20 years. So I'm going to jump back to our topic. I hope you don't mind if I stay on sports just a little longer. In 2015, a Dallas Cowboy named Greg Hardy had been found guilty of assaulting his girlfriend in an initial court trial. But he was still enthusiastically praised by the team owner and the management. In fact, it was more than Fox broadcaster and football legend Terry Bradshaw could handle. So he spoke out during a broadcast and said, "I hope we never have a place in the NFL for people who strike a woman." Another teachable moment? We thought so. One of the greatest players in the NFL is no longer a bystander, he is an upstander. Was there something we could do to acknowledge him? Yes. We invited our Facebook and Twitter community to sign a digital thank you card. And in a matter of days, there were thousands of signatures. We used a digital petition tool, and we turned it into a thank you card to engage our supporters with a call to action. Here's another example. We're big fans of a Pittsburgh Steeler named William Gay. He's a violence prevention advocate whose mother was killed by a stepfather when he was just a boy. He wore purple shoes during Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and he was subsequently fined by the NFL for sending a message with his uniform. Really? In response, we emailed our database of support, we posted on social media, and we invited everyone to thank Will Gay for taking a stand, and we got another great response. So here's a quick recap. It's likely that many of you listening today are far beyond these tips and these tools. You've already jumped in with both feet and are staging successful social media campaigns. But if you're still in the initial stages of growing your community, the thought I want to leave behind with you today is that digital media gives us that voice we didn't have 20 years ago. So let's use it. Thanks to new tools and dealing with the media, it's all become more dynamic and more democratic. Thank you so much for listening. And Christy, I'm going to turn the webinar back over to you to introduce our next case study.
Great. So next up we have David and Thomas from We Are Native, and I'm excited for them to present to everyone because they have a great example of the sort of multi-touch point campaigns that we've been speaking about, and I think it'll be a great connection to everything that we've been talking about. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our work with We Are Native. My name is David Stevens. I'm a nurse and also the multimedia project specialist here at the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board.
And my name is Thomas Ghostdog. I'm an enrolled member of the Burns Paiute tribe, which is located in southeast Oregon, and I'm a We Are Native specialist along with David, and I also help shepherd our cohort of We Are Native youth ambassadors. And thank you for this opportunity.
To give you a little bit of background about the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board, we are a nonprofit organization that serves the 43 federally recognized tribes in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho.
We Are Native is a multimedia health resource for Native teens and young adults across the U.S. The service launched in 2012 and includes a website, Facebook, Instagram, a YouTube channel. This project is funded by the Indian Health Service, HIV and behavioral health programs, and as such, it gives particular focus to the prevention of suicide, bullying, STDs, teen pregnancy, and drug and alcohol use.
Hopefully you can hear us now. We'll speak closer to the mic. To guide our messaging, we created a media strategic plan with discrete goals and objectives. To carry that plan out, our team meets bi-monthly to brainstorm messaging topics and resources and maps them out weekly and annual messaging calendars. As you can see here, our high-tech messaging calendar in our office that we have. Our development team includes 5 to 6 staff who contribute, doc, a nurse, myself, a teacher. We have a suicide prevention team, a youth empowerment guru here, Thomas, and 50 youth ambassadors. Our youth ambassadors are the heart and soul of We Are Native. They are committed to spreading positive vibes and creating positive change in their communities. They also create and provide feedback on new We Are Native content. They travel to other communities to amplify youth issues and also represent We Are Native at national conferences. Here is an example of our messaging plan. Our goal is to provide a mix of content that will be engaging to our audience, health, humor, what's trending, sports, celebrity news, and to schedule these messages we use Hootsuite, Facebook's scheduling tool, and also our text message provider, Moseo.
Here's a little more background information about our actual website itself. The website includes content on social, emotional, physical, and spiritual health. It also provides general life advice on a wide variety of topics, from transitioning to college to communicating with friends. We wrapped all this medically accurate information into a fun, interactive package driven by Native youth. We knew that if we were going to be successfully compete for their time and attention online, we'd have to create a positive, entertaining, interactive space that really spoke to their everyday experiences and interests.
Some strategies that we use to boost interaction, we try to compile the most engaging content, compelling images, and stories. We also amplify positive stories about youth doing good things in Indian country. We have monthly contests. We've learned through trial and error as to what makes a contest successful, but we always ask ourselves when creating a contest, is what we're asking youth to do actionable? Is our audience really going to do what we're asking them to do? And how many steps will it actually take them? A couple of things that work for us to boost user engagement include, again, using celebrities, humor, and specific facts to our target audience, Native youth. To bring users back to the meat and potatoes of the website, as we call it, we use monthly contests and Facebook, Instagram, and also text message prompts. To enroll in the text message service, youth just text the word Native to 24587. Currently, we have about 4,000 folks signed up for the text message service.
Here's a screenshot of our Facebook page. It had been mentioned earlier in this webinar that youth are on different social media platforms, and for us, we found that Facebook is by far our most popular outlet to reach our target audience. It's kind of small, but if you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, we're approaching 40,000 likes, and for us, that's huge. So anything we post, whether it's medical information, something positive that other Native youth are doing in their communities, almost 40,000 people are seeing that, whether that's scrolling through their Facebook or, just being online. So Facebook is by far our most popular means to reach our audience. Another screenshot is our Instagram. Not as popular as Facebook, but we are approaching the followers, and it seems to be working well for us as well. And here's an example of a campaign that we did last September for Suicide Prevention Month. Built off a social marketing campaign that our Thrive Project designed, hashtag We Are Connected, We Need You Here. For our monthly contest, we challenged the youth ambassadors to personalize the sign and upload their photos to social media with the hashtag We Need You Here.
We promoted the contest via Facebook and text message. Social media content focused on connecting users to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and other suicide prevention resources available on our website.
Another really popular portion of our website is an anonymous Ask Auntie Q&A service to highlight suicide-related questions that have been submitted to the site. It's one of our most active sections of our website, taking away the embarrassment youth might feel asking parents, friends, or healthcare providers.
Our youth ambassadors promoted the campaign in their communities and through their own social media networks. A story about the youth's efforts was picked up by Indian Country Today, which drew a lot of attention to the campaign and the topic of suicide. They did a really good job framing the story around youth empowerment and the power of youth activism, though, which is different than a lot of press that focuses on suicide in Indian country, tending to highlight the negative statistics, which isn't really engaging or actionable for our youth audience. We measured the campaign's reach. Through these channels, the campaign reached nearly 7,000 people per day during the month of September. We had 8,000 website page views and a reach of 162,000 on Facebook. Our demographics are primarily teen and young adult females. In terms of budget, most staff are in-kind, funded by adolescent health grants. The website and images are also grant funded. For our social marketing campaigns, we have roughly $1,000 per year, which we primarily use to boost content on social media and disseminate our materials.
Lastly, please help us spread the word about We Are Native. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check out our YouTube channel, or even text NATIVE to 24587 to receive weekly health tips, contests, and all-around life advice. And we just want to say thank you from here in the Pacific Northwest for giving us this opportunity to showcase our awesome website.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, so we have about 20 minutes for Q&A, and I have here 3 questions for our presenters here today. So while we're discussing these questions, please feel free to add more in the chat box. So I'll get started here with the very first question. One person said that my agency is specifically trying to reach youth in middle and high school and wanted to know if the presenters were going to speak more in depth about emerging social media platforms. And I don't know if we quite covered it to the extent where we featured individual emerging social media topics, but I would love to turn it over to maybe the Media Cause team and also We Are Native to see, you know, what are some emerging social media platforms that you could introduce to folks today right now?
Hey everyone, this is Sarah. Great question. One thing that we have heard is really helpful, we haven't been doing very much of it, but is texting, so SMS messaging, which is also what We Are Native, I believe, just mentioned. So way to go, We Are Native. There's an article that I will try and find, let's see here. It's a podcast, I'll send this over to everyone, about how to use data to create social change by this really smart woman who talks all about how she used texting to be able to reach kids in high school, and that kids are more likely to text their feelings than they are to speak to an adult about their feelings, which was an interesting finding from this. So we'll drop that into this chat right now so you guys can all listen to that if you have the time. We find that Kik is also doing a lot because kids can be anonymous on it and they enjoy that. That doesn't necessarily help you with your brand management. If you're looking for, it sounds like what you're looking for is ways to reach people if kids are your target demographic. And I have also read a lot of studies about how brand association works really well because everyone wants to be cool in middle school and high school. And finding out just like what is cool in the area and what is cool and local in the area and how can you get someone else's brand to help spread your message for you is a really great shortcut to getting to that target audience. Christy, do you have anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Futures as well. There's That's Not Cool, teen dating violence website. Does a great job of reaching out to youth, and I think some of the tactics that they've employed have been really successful. I don't know if Marcia wants to speak to that a bit further, but I think they're a great example of someone who's really using emerging platforms to reach out to teens in their community.
I'll jump in as well. I agree. In fact, we're very proud that we got a Webby for that website that's just launched. And it has a great breadth of things, an app, a game, an ambassador program. So I highly recommend somebody to surf it later today. It's called that'snotcool.com.
All right. So I just wanted to spell one of the tools that Sarah mentioned, Kik. It's K-I-K, if you wanted to Google that a little later. All right, so another question. Can you please revisit the evergreen topic again, please? And I think that was mentioned during Media Causes presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. And ask a follow-up question on this if you have one. I'll start by clarifying what evergreen content is. Evergreen content is investing time and money into stories or websites or web pages that really describe the issue and what you do to address the issue. So these are things that aren't changing quickly. So you'll invest in maybe making an infographic that describes the issue or in creating some stats that are really actionable or really emotional for people to know about. And that content you can share pretty frequently anytime you think that there are new people joining your community. So that's sort of what do you guys consider to be like level one things that people need to know to kind of be able to understand or empathize with future, more specific, more detailed communications. Do I have evergreen content examples? Absolutely. What was that called? Yeah, the Cornell lab. So if they're using bird sounds, and they have that content because they care about birds and they want everyone to know what bird sounds like, especially if like species go extinct or if they become rare, that content exists. They're not creating more content or new content. They're using that content and they're trying to find people who want that red hawk sound. Forgive me, I am not the birder on our team. And they use that content to try and find new people who want that information and share that with them. So that content has life beyond just the initial creation of the content. Other things that we do are, one of our clients, we always talk about the issue of like child abuse. We just share stats about child abuse so that people who come to our community understand generally how many people in the U.S. are victims of child abuse, how much money is going into the child pornography industry. These are just sort of like high-level numbers that everyone on the team knows, but every couple of weeks we resurface them, maybe once a month for some of those bigger ones. We resurface them so that anyone who's new to the community also has those like baseline stats that represent our community.
And one thing I just want to speak to that'll be, I think, more relative to the domestic violence community and specifically Futures. They have a lot of materials that they house on their website, 10 ways to engage men, to help boys, that sort of thing. And any sort of like PDFs or materials that you have on your site can easily be translated into a landing page that'll capture an audience. So evergreen content is really anything that you can continue to use over and over again. An example of non-evergreen content would be like the William Gay stories that Marcia shared or anything that's related to breaking news that has a shelf life to it. So hopefully we answered that question.
I would also say that some of our most successful evergreen are our fact sheets. Statistically, more people come to our site for fact sheets than any other thing they come to address. So think about how you might create those in your own website.
Great. And this question came a little bit later on. I think it was perhaps in response to some of the tools that you mentioned, Sarah. Are there recommendations for providing advocacy/support to teams via text? And I also wanted to give the We Are Native team a chance to respond because I know that's a platform that you use.
Yeah, this is David from We Are Native. In 2009, we conducted a media use survey to see where our target audience was at, and they were primarily using text for middle school and high school aged youth. Over 90% of text messages, I believe, are opened, and we plan to conduct that media use survey again this year. We also recently conducted a texting for sexual health study using our one-way dissemination text message service, and it was effective in changing behaviors regarding STI and HIV testing as well as other sexual health behaviors. So we would be happy to share messages and messaging strategy for text with the audience.
Great, thank you. Sarah or Christy, do you have anything to add?
Nope, that was perfect.
Okay, great. All right, so moving on to our next question. When partnering with companies receiving bad press, how do you manage the tension between potentially legitimizing bad actors and drawing for-profit support to amplify your message? How do you keep the message clean? So again, how do you manage that tension between legitimizing bad actors and drawing for-profit support to amplify your message while not being too associated with that image? So how do you keep the message, quote unquote, clean? And I'm looking here at our Director of Communications to see if she could start us off.
I'm thinking of a couple cases that came our way this year in regard to, again, sports and athletes. And when an athlete was submitted to us or suggested to us as a spokesperson, and we knew that their background was less than ideal, we keep our standards high, and as much as we like to engage with them, we did not. And I'll just say, because it happened before my time, I always thought it was fascinating that in the Rihanna-Chris Brown debacle that happened several years ago, it wasn't long after it happened that his management called us and asked if we would like to work with him as a spokesperson. And this is an example where a guy has made such an egregious error that we weren't here to rehabilitate him. He needed to go to therapy. He needed more professional help, and it was not the right choice for us to take him on as a spokesman. Whereas others thought, wow, you could have had such great press exposure, not if it really compromised our own ideals.
Okay, great.
Marsha, that's a great example.
I noticed one comment, somebody said that I feel that our organization tries to stay away from being political at all or not wanting to upset the supporters and tend to only post positive Facebook posts. I feel like we have to show the problem before our supporters really know what they need to help. What do you think about that?
I think it's beneficial to take a stand, not necessarily a political stand, but for example, with the Futures audience, I think a lot of their posts that are more effective are when they really show their own voice and kind of give an opinion on something. Yeah, there are ways to do it, and it can be touchy, but I think, if you really know what your audience is responding to, you can find a way to do it. Working in this space, it's not a positive issue, and I think anytime you can voice your concerns or really kind of be real with your audience, they're going to be receptive to that.
I'd also like to add to that, something we use with our clients is some stories get really upsetting, And some of those stories are really powerful to understand the depth and breadth of the issues that all of us are dealing with. But when you're creating a communications public storyline, my gut check for when I'm talking about upsetting content is I never want to upset someone more than my organization has the power to support that person. So for example, I don't want to bombard someone's Facebook feed with like photos of a woman who was beaten to death if I don't also have like an incredible call to action that makes everyone feel like, oh gosh, I'm so upset. Oh, and look at this incredible way that I can support. I feel like I have answered that emotion that was created within me. So if that helps at all.
Yeah. Great. So before we move on to the next question, we have a follow-up question for the We Are Native team. What was some of the content of the text messages? I see that the text messages are something of interest to a lot of folks. Did some of the text messages provide links to online content? So Thomas or David?
Prior to sending out the messages, we did a focus group with about 60 Native youth here in the Northwest, and we learned that they wanted the language to be professional, no use of abbreviations, which we found surprising. We wanted to use humor, and in addition to including links, they wanted to have us send messages that were actionable in and of themselves. So within the 160-character limit, realizing that some people don't have smartphones and can't access those links. So a preference for not including links, but when we were trying to get users back to the website or for additional information, we would also include links.
All right, so switching gears a little bit, the next question is about fundraising platforms. What fundraising platforms is recommended for a small nonprofit? And this person said Giving Fuel. I've never heard of Giving Fuel, but if anyone else has, if you can comment on it, or Media Cause, if you can speak to any other platforms that your other clients have used. And Marcia, if you want to share what Futures uses as well.
If you can do that.
This is Sarah. A couple quick thoughts on using third-party platforms. One note is that third-party platforms always charge some sort of a processing fee. So pulling up a bunch of them and figuring out which one is going to be charging you the least is always valuable. This seems to change fairly frequently, so I always like to research this again anytime I'm looking at doing it. Stay Classy, Kickstarter, both of those are big and good, and having them be big is valuable because they have a larger reach. But when you're working on a big platform, if you don't invest in a strong video asset that really tells your story, I think you're going to be drowned out in the noise. In which case, if you have something much smaller, looking for places that are regional even can be really valuable. But I would also like to suggest that when you build your own community, instead of spending on each or trying to invest in a platform for donations in a like crowdsourced kind of way, trying to build your own community can be really successful, and then asking them via email for donations. We find that to best for most of our clients unless there's a specific campaign that you've created a lot of content assets around to help someone who's never heard of you before hear about you, be excited about you, and donate to you all within 30 seconds.
Great. And I noticed the question, I'm trying to reinterpret the question, but it reads, what apps can be used to create media and funding that is free? To create media and funding that is free.
We'll ask Tiffany to be a little more specific if you can type in some details.
If you can follow up on that question, And in the meantime, I wanted to ask the next question, which is, has anyone had successes with social media marketing targeting predominantly African American and Latino youth ages 12 through 17? And so, if none of our speakers have, particular advice on specific tools for that specific demographic, I welcome our other participants to please chime in and share resources. I mean, the We Are Native team has spoken about different tools that they use to target, that younger demographic, 12 to 17. So if, Sarah, Christy, if you have any others to add. I know for our website, That's Not Cool, they started a Tumblr page, which is like a little micro-blogging website, and it's easy for folks to share it, reshare it, and they're like very short, pithy, funny, witty things that are easily shareable. So I'm not the expert here, so I want to turn it back over to our speakers. We Are Native. I know we cut out some slides. Were there any other tools that you wanted to mention? Maybe targeting that younger demographic, 12 to 17?
I think for us specifically, this is Tommy, by the way, from We Are Native. For us specifically, really engaging with our target audience, what worked best for us was our ambassador program, and having, youth of that target audience help with spreading your positive messaging. And they do that in their own respected community. We do have 50 youth ambassadors, and they're all over the U.S. And so anytime we need help with creating content or, the needs of our target audience, we ask our ambassadors, and they're really responsive. I have a closed private Facebook group, and they post things in there. I ask questions in there, and I think that seems to work really well for us. If you can or able to, start out small, maybe go out into the community and really engage with youth of that target audience who want to, see positive change. And working with them, and like I mentioned, they're with the target audience every day, whether that's their friends, whether they're in their own schools. Our ambassadors, they've done presentations at their own school. We send them some of our swag that they can hand out, and then they present on We Are Native, and share what we offer to Native youth, which is a safe community. So that works best for us.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. I mean, if you don't have the luxury of having a 50-person youth ambassador group, I think starting small with a focus group and seeing if that focus group can help you think of other platforms that are really popular right now. And also maybe cultivate something similar to an ambassador program where they can help you spread the message. All right, so we have 3 minutes left, and I have another question. Given this raucous political season, what are your recommendations about how to approach sharing social media posts that involve current candidates? That probably depends on your organization's policies regarding how political you can get. But I see Marcia nodding her head, so maybe she has some words of advice.
Yes, I would say to Chad, we are incredibly nonpartisan. It is a specific foundation of our organization. We are funded by Washington often. We don't wish to tread on those who have a political agenda. And I would recommend the same to you. I will just sort of say as an aside, just in building this PowerPoint, when I put candidates up, it looked uncomfortable. It didn't feel like we're truly telling our story. That's not what we do from day to day. So we recommend against engaging. That's for our organization.
Yeah, I would agree on that note because if you are a 501c3 organization and you're seen as endorsing any candidate, you could lose your status. I don't know if everyone on this call is 501c3, but that's just a note there. So generally, almost all of our clients are 501c3, and we avoid any sort of posts around candidates because it could be seen as an endorsement and nobody wants to lose their nonprofit status.
I see an update from the president of Chad Bank. There's just one candidate who is hard not to post.
We all know what you mean.
And we'll leave it at that. I saw that Tiffany clarified her question. Are there apps that can be free to use for media platforms? I think she's maybe specifically thinking about to create funding. And when you mentioned some of the other like crowdfunding platforms, you said that there is a fee that you need to look out for and perhaps go with the most economical choice. Are there any platforms out there that are just completely free that you might know of?
Same question, is there a plug-in for your website that allows for a donate button that's free?
Not that I know of. It's the same as like a credit card processing fee. Like any money processing has a fee associated with it. And the services that are platforms like GoFundMe, like all the crowdsourcing ones that we hear about, Kickstarter, all of those have, in addition to that cost per transaction, also sort of have like a management fee on top of that that's either rolled into that or is a separate fee. Typically, it's cheapest to process donations via your website, typically. But PayPal, I'm seeing a lot of information about PayPal.
PayPal giving funds.
PayPal giving funds.
Great. All right. So thank you all for your fantastic questions, for being interactive, for being patient as we were figuring out all of the audio technicalities. We're hoping that the recording caught the audio, but if not, there is going to be the closed captioning transcript, and at least half of the recording will have the audio. So I apologize for all of that. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you all to our fantastic speakers for sharing your expertise and how you've been using digital media strategies in your organizations. Please remember to fill out the evaluation. It should pop up on your screen when I exit the meeting, and it's also there on the screen right now. It's the SurveyMonkey link. And your feedback is very important to us, and we would love to hear what you thought about our webinar today. So thank you all so much. You'll be receiving a follow-up email from us with a link to the recording and a link to download the presentation and all of that. So thank you very much. All right, have a good rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.